In this video, I'm going to give you my top 10 tips for creating a low maintenance garden that has a high maintenance appearance. You can apply these tips to any style of garden, and I'll give you an extra bonus tip at the end as well. Before we get on with the rest of the video, may I invite you to visit my new revamped website at jillbrotherton.com, where we have lots of new gardening related gifts and products which you can buy directly from Amazon. The website is organised into two distinct shops. There's a USA shop and a UK shop, although many of these products can be bought internationally directly from Amazon. You can see a drop-down list which will give you the various options depending on what products you fancy. On each page there's also a tab that will take you directly to the category you want. We also have a range of Christmas related designs and colouring books. Our t-shirts come in a variety of colours and sizes, so don't be put off by the colour pictured on our website. If you like the design, you can likely buy it in another colour. Anyhow, with all that being said, let's get back to the video. So the first thing you need to do, point number one, is to pick perennials over annuals, because perennials just reliably come back every year and flower in your garden. And one of the ways you keep them flowering is obviously to pick perennials that flower at different times to ensure a succession of flowers. So for instance, you've got things like Granny's Bonnet Aquilegia will flower earlier in the year, and then you've got Rudbeckia will flower later in the year. And then if you just stagger your flowering perennials, picking ones that flower at different times, that will ensure a succession of colours in your borders that will come back every single year. So the other way, obviously, you can ensure continual flowering every year without having to plant every year is to plant bulbs, and so they'll even give you earlier flowering. Generally, daffodils, alliums and tulips obviously will all flower largely before your perennials in your borders start flowering, so that just adds an extra length of time. Okay, so number two, if you must have annuals and biennials, then pick obviously ones that prolifically self-seed. Things like Honesty, Nasturtium, Nigella and Calendula all readily self-seed in my garden. In some gardens with a lot of sunshine, you get a Cosmos will self-seed. Look at what works in your zone. In terms of biennials, things that reliably self-seed and come back every year as though they are perennials, you have Hollyhock, and Foxgloves is probably the best one for that. So number three, choose native plants. What makes growing really hard work is when you go to the garden centre and you see a banana plant or some other tropical plant that's really just not suited to our conditions here. So choose whatever suits your area, whatever's native. Not only does it benefit obviously the local wildlife and biodiversity as well, but it just makes it easier for you. If you think about a banana plant, growing banana plants here in the UK, you always see it on these gardening programs, how to wrap up your garden, your banana plant for winter. Honestly, do you really want to be doing that? Just got to use a load of plastic or hessian or whatever to cut it back, wrap it up and take it indoors every winter. Who can be bothered? Just choose native plants. Number four, choose drought tolerant varieties. I have mentioned in my previous video about roses. We'll get to roses in a minute, but I did a whole video on why you should grow roses, and they are also pretty drought tolerant in the summer. But in general, you have drought tolerant plants such as Russian sage, sedum, daylilies, lavender. All these plants are pretty drought tolerant, which means you're not going to be running around watering them. If you want to avoid having to do a lot of watering, avoid hanging baskets and container gardening, or set up obviously an irrigation system. But as a general rule, plants growing in the ground fare better in dry conditions than plants in containers. Number five, flowering shrubs. So if you pick flowering shrubs, then you've got that next level of height. If you pick something that's maybe a bit taller than your borders or as a backdrop to your borders, then you've got an extra layer of flowers that you don't have to do anything with. You maybe just have to prune them lightly once a year, such as a buddleia is a classic example of a prolifically flowering shrub, which makes a great backdrop to your borders, just provides more colour. Also obviously got roses, as I mentioned as well. Another beautiful flowering shrub is the mock orange, and of course you've got all your blossoming plants that blossom in spring. Number six, pick slow growing and evergreen shrubs, preferably things you can topiary, for two reasons. One, they're going to obviously maintain their leaves in the winter, and that's going to create a tidy looking statement plant that will have interest even during the winter. And two, if you topiary it, it will give you a kind of a place where the eye is drawn away from the messier parts of your gardens. You're mostly noticing the topiary, which looks very smart and neat, so that tricks the eye into thinking generally the garden is neater and tidier than it is. And this is how you create kind of that low maintenance look, that high maintenance look, even though perhaps you have neglected some parts of your garden. And the reason you pick something slow growing such as box is because obviously you're only going to have to shape them every 2 to 3 years. They will hold their shape for a pretty long time. Number 7, a trick for creating sort of abundance in the garden, in a low maintenance garden that has a high maintenance appearance, is to layer. And layering is simply adding different heights and adding plants that have interest at different times of the year. By creating height, you give the appearance that you have this high maintenance garden full of interest that is hard work, when in fact actually you've planted up your plants in such a way that the plants are doing all the work. They're doing what they do naturally, but you've just organized it in such a way that it looks high maintenance, such as, for instance, a climbing rose up a tree adds added interest and depth and abundance to the flowering period in your garden. Adding a buddleia at the back of your flowering border just creates like a firework display, and it's just adding those extra details, thinking through the structure and the flowering period of each shrub, that creates that extra abundance, that extra high maintenance look with literally no effort. You're literally going to plant everything once, and then the plants will do all the work. I just want to quickly add, clematis is another one that's great for layering because it will ramble through things and up hedges and pergolas, etc. And you can find lots of different types of clematis that all flower at different times of year. So you could really use clematis a lot for layering in your garden. Also, honeysuckle is another one. Number 8, to keep plants healthy so that you're not always running out there having to deal with diseases. Think about companion planting. If you plant salvia and lavender around the base of roses, that it tends to act as a repellent for many pests and diseases. Marigolds apparently deter whitefly, and many of the stronger smelling flowers such as lavender, as I mentioned, deters pests on roses. And then you've got things like oregano and rosemary. And there's even some anecdotal advice that sweet peas will attract the pests that would normally attack your broad beans or your other growing peas. So that's worth knowing. And of course, then there's the nasturtium, which we know attracts the cabbage white larvae, caterpillars, which will eat the nasturtium leaves and thus leave your other plants alone. So look into companion planting. Number 9 is mulching. So I did do recently a video on mulching with leaves, which I'll link in the description below. But mulching, you can use bark chippings, cardboard even, compost, well-rotted manure, and a thick layer of mulch will do one of 2 things. Well, 3 things really. 1, it will suppress weeds, so less weeding. 2, it will rot down and break up and sort of work its way into the soil, therefore improving the composition of the soil, and it will do that without you doing anything else. And the 3rd reason, if you use a really good mulch that's high in nutrients, of course it will also then feed your plants as well. So it will do kind of 3 things in one, and you may just have to do it 1 or 2 times a year, and that's it, job done. And finally, number 10, but don't forget to stay for the bonus fact, is soft landscaping. So avoid hard landscaping. Hard landscaping, generally decking, concrete, stone, they all require a lot of work to maintain, whether it be difficult weeding, cleaning off algae to stop things getting slippy. You know, when you get leaf drop on concrete, it can be lethal. So avoid hard landscaping. If you use soft landscaping such as bark chippings or gravel pathways, it's really easy to weed, because you can push a hoe through gravel and you can literally take up whole clumps of weeds, and it doesn't disturb the pathway at all. And then every year or so, I personally just throw another bag of bark chipping or another bag of gravel onto the area and maybe trim around the edges, and that's it. It also means that you can move your landscaping around. If you've put a seating area somewhere that you don't really like, it's not that difficult to resolve and move because it's not hard landscaping. All right, so then let's get to my bonus point. My bonus point is really just this: keep your garden organic. We've become so reliant on products and chemicals and pesticides and all these sorts of different things that we don't actually realise the damage we're causing. And it's a catch-22 situation where we are constantly poisoning all the beneficial insects, pathogens, etc. that keep the garden healthy without your help. So if you don't spray and you don't poison and you don't even have to overly feed your garden, if you look after the soil properly with the mulching as I described earlier, then your garden will start to regenerate. So we've got a decline here in the UK of thrushes, garden thrushes. Garden thrushes are the main consumers of slugs and snails. The reason we have a decline in thrushes is because obviously so many people are still using slug pellets or other poisons that kill the birds when they eat them. So by not poisoning things, you build back up your bird population. The birds, blue tits, do you know blue tits will eat your aphids on your rosebuds? So don't poison your rose tips. You can actually just wipe them off any poisons like that, any aphids with your fingers anyway. But please don't poison. The blue tits will eat your aphids. If you don't poison the garden, you'll get more ladybirds, and the ladybirds eat your aphids. So you have to let go of the control and allow nature to take control, because nature has a much better way of balancing pests, diseases and pathogens than we ever can. So you don't have to go to the shop and poison anything anymore. Give your garden at least 2 to 3 years to regenerate, and you will start to see the biodiversity will start to improve. You'll get another layer of beautiful butterflies, and all your bugs will just all balance each other out. The birds will balance the beetles out, and the ladybirds will balance the aphids out, and just trust in nature. That's my bonus tip, to go organic. It really is the lowest maintenance way to trust in nature to take care of your pests, your diseases and your pathogens. Okay, I hope you found this video really helpful. If you did, don't forget to subscribe, like, click the notification bell, and I'll see you again in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.